Welcome to our course on malicious compliance, where individuals consistently adhere to instructions. In the United States, the letter H is used in place of the letter K, as in the case of this text. My father passed away on Father's Day in 2012. He was divorced and living alone at the time of his death. As the only child, I was responsible for handling all of his affairs. One of the tasks I had to complete was canceling his utilities. I contacted the relevant company to inquire about the procedure for canceling his account. The representative I spoke with advised me to send in a certified copy of his death certificate. I duly sent in the certificate, but the following month, I received another bill. I contacted the company again to inquire about this. Once more, a different woman answered the phone. She informed me that I had to speak with the account holder because I was not listed as the account holder. I informed her that the account holder had passed away, but she was unmoved. I was forced to make an appointment with a supervisor so that she could speak with the account holder directly. I arrived at the Board of Public Utilities with another death certificate and his ashes, which they had returned in a clear bag. I placed them on her desk and told her to inform him that I loved him. The woman became visibly distressed and abruptly stood from her chair, subsequently contacting the authorities. She alleged that I had physically assaulted her, despite the presence of my late father's remains on her desk, accompanied by the relevant death certificate. Law enforcement personnel questioned me about my actions, prompting me to recount the aforementioned narrative. The supervisor superior was summoned for an urgent discussion, during which the authorities advised me against removing human remains in public. I informed them that I concurred with their assessment that the situation was highly irregular. However, she was adamant about speaking with him in person. By the time they concluded their discussion, the supervisor superior had cultivated a favorable impression and facilitated a resolution. Nevertheless, the narrative remains unresolved. I was compelled to contact them a few days later to reinstate utilities to the residence in my name. When the individual on the other end of the line observed the address in my name, I was immediately placed on hold. The supervisor superior, who had been instrumental in assisting me, took the call. She was highly complimentary and waved all as the call was concluding. She informed me that she was once again remorseful for the employee's lack of empathy. She stated that the employee had been terminated and reiterated her profound regret. This anecdote actually occurred approximately a decade ago. I was in a romantic relationship with a woman for approximately a year. Our relationship was progressing well, and both of our leases on our respective apartments were nearing expiration. We decided to cohabitate to advance our relationship. Additionally, we would have saved a considerable amount of money. At the time, I was strongly inclined to pursue a long-term relationship with this woman. Consequently, we signed a one-year lease on a new apartment. During the first 4 months, our relationship flourished. However, it subsequently deteriorated. I do not wish to assign blame, it simply did not work out. The most distressing aspect was that she began to exhibit increasingly hostile behavior towards me. After a few particularly intense arguments, I decided to move out with haste. I secured an inexpensive apartment across town and vacated the premises on a Saturday, as I was unable to endure the situation any longer. Approximately 1 week later, I was sufficiently calm to contact her and request that she find a new roommate and remove me from the lease. She declined, stating that she lacked the time to find a new roommate and that she could not afford the apartment on her own. Over the following 2 weeks, I identified 2 mutual acquaintances who were willing to move in. She rejects them for reasons that appear arbitrary and has not made any effort to identify a suitable roommate. I realize that her intention is to occupy the space for the next 8 months while I am responsible for half the rent and utilities. I am extremely displeased with this turn of events. The financial implications of this situation are significant. I am currently paying 2 leases and utilities, which is unsustainable in the long term. Furthermore, it is not reasonable to expect me to continue bearing this burden indefinitely. I had discovered during our week without contact that she had already initiated contact with another individual. This was a surprising turn of events, given the recent breakup. However, I have no evidence to suggest that she was unfaithful, so this does not represent a significant issue. Nevertheless, I was aware that my former partner was highly sexually active and that we had sexual intercourse on a daily basis. She was required to leave the house at approximately 8 a.m. to attend work. The cost is $45. Therefore, sexual intercourse occurred at approximately 7:45 a.m. each morning. Our relationship had positive aspects, including her enthusiasm for sexual activity. Consequently, I devised a plan to terminate the lease. The following morning, I arrived at her former residence at 7:45 a.m. and waited in my vehicle until 7:50 a.m. I reasoned that I was sufficiently acquainted with her to recognize that this was an optimal time. Our residence was a studio, and the bed in question was situated across from the front entrance and to the right of a modest kitchen and dining area. I swiftly turned the key and opened the door, and my suspicions were confirmed. My former partner was present. In my written account of these events, I make eye contact with the man in question. I will never forget the look of shock, perhaps mixed with shame, on his face. She rolls off him and pulls the cover up over them. They are both naked. I say, "Don't mind me," and go into the cupboard to retrieve some of the Lucky Charms that I had purchased. I remained in the room and proceeded to prepare a bowl of cereal, adding milk and beginning to consume it. I ignored the presence of the other individual, who was unable to move due to the absence of his clothing. My former partner expressed a desire for me to leave the premises, and I informed him that I was still under the terms of my lease and that I would not be interrupted. The other individual began to scream. She proceeded to verbally abuse me, hurling insults and profanities at me. She then threw a pair of shoes at me, but missed. She subsequently engaged in a brief, unproductive outburst from the bed. I, on the other hand, remained calm and continued eating my cereal for approximately 15 minutes. I then informed her that I needed to leave for work. The man in question did not move from his position or utter a single word. The following day, I opened the door at 7 o'clock. $40. Morning, this time, she and her new partner are awake and dressed. I greet them with a cheerful demeanor, offering them bagels and cream cheese. I then excuse myself to take a shower. She appears to be more composed this time, but begins to swear when I leave. I prepare a bagel and depart myself. I return at approximately 8 p.m. With some chipotle, they are situated on the bed, observing television. I sit at the counter on a bar stool, begin to tear into my burrito, and engage in conversation with them in a manner reminiscent of a close friend. "What are we watching tonight?" "Oh, excellent. I have not seen that particular program in several years." I have indeed stayed for approximately 30 minutes. After consuming my burrito for approximately 15 minutes, I proceeded to inquire about matters that were not pertinent to the situation. My actions were perceived as bothersome by the individual in question, who I recognized as a member of her social circle. Despite my best efforts, I was unable to ascertain his name. He appeared visibly uneasy and was notably reticent. My ex-partner was visibly displeased and appeared to be growing increasingly agitated. On the third morning, I arrived at the residence at 7:45 a.m. 10 a.m. Upon discovering that they were not present, I proceeded to take a shower and consume a bowl of cereal before leaving a brief note expressing my regret at having missed them and indicating that I would see them that evening. During the course of the day, I received a number of faxes from my former partner, requesting my signature on a new lease agreement for our apartment, as well as signatures canceling our power, water, and internet bills. I found the process of signing and faxing the documents to be enjoyable. I did not see or hear from either of them again. I am aware that many of you are pleased that this man has taken revenge against his former partner. However, I had hoped that the outcome would be different. I have viewed sufficient pornographic material on the website Pornhub to realize that we could have had a There is, however, another potential outcome to this narrative. I have spent my entire professional life as a mechanic, and this is one of my most memorable experiences. A customer arrived at my workshop complaining about a vibration. I placed the vehicle on the lift and conducted an inspection of the front end. I discovered a severely worn tie rod and a malfunctioning rack and pinion. In essence, the passenger side front wheel was not properly secured to the steering system, which posed a significant safety hazard. The front wheel on the passenger side was not fully secured to the steering system. This posed a significant safety risk, as it would likely result in the wheel becoming completely detached from the steering mechanism. I informed the customer of the estimated cost of the repair and advised her that it was not safe for her to operate the vehicle. She requested that I reassemble the vehicle so that she could leave. I informed her that I was unable to do so. I informed her that if the vehicle broke after she left, I would be held liable. She then began to verbally abuse me, stating that she would call the police and sue me. She also mentioned that her cousin's brother knows someone who is related to the chief of police, and that I would be arrested. She proceeded to call the police, and they arrived on the scene. I then showed the officers the vehicle, and I was aware of the safety concerns and was instructed by the authorities to simply allow the customer to leave the premises with the vehicle. I did so, and she was even asked to sign a statement declining crucial safety repairs. She subsequently departed the property, only to be pulled over and her vehicle impounded. Additionally, she was issued a citation for reckless driving. While operating the vehicle, I was gratified to observe that the authorities had impounded her car. I would like to provide further clarification regarding the circumstances. The police informed her that it was illegal to operate the vehicle. At that time, state laws permitted me to do precisely what I had offered to do, which was to discount the cost of the repair and accept payments. However, she still refused. I demanded that she return my vehicle immediately. I was able to drive away from the scene in front of the police officers, despite the illegality of my actions. Yesterday, I decided to take my children to an international chain restaurant. The children's meal includes ice cream, but the restaurant did not provide bowls for serving the ice cream. I then proceeded to utilize the cream machine, reasoning that I would simply request bowls from an employee. This is precisely what I did, prompting the individual in question to turn and survey the extensive assortment of bowls situated behind him. These ranged in size from the modest to the substantial, with numerous variations in between. It became evident that neither of us was aware of the intended dimensions of the children's ice cream. This prompted the individual to consider the matter. I knew what to do. I would simply inquire of the manager. "Hey boss, what size bowl should we give the kids?" I called out, without turning around. The manager replied, "Effing bowl." I then asked, "What do you think, sir?" The manager, with his distinctive charm, tact, and grace, replied, "Just give him a bowl." The employee then looked back at the bowls, and I observed him select one of the largest. He wore a grin on his face. "I apologize for that, sir. I believe it is probably these ones," he said as he handed me two of the largest bowls in the restaurant. I was practically giggling with glee. My children were similarly delighted. The manager walked by when we were halfway through and made a noise like a startled opossum, but said no actual. I must concede that I am uncertain as to the precise vocalization of a startled opossum. However, I will venture a hypothesis. Several years ago, I was on a flight from Los Angeles to Singapore, which took approximately 16 hours. I am a tall individual, approximately 63 inches in height. This is equivalent to 190 centimeters for the rest of the world, and it results in a lack of optimal seating accommodations. In economy class seats on most planes, my knees are often very close or right up against the seat in front of me. This makes it impossible for the person in front of me to recline their seats, which usually isn't a problem once the person in front of me sees how cramped I am in those tiny seats. However, on this particular flight, the individual in the adjacent seat attempted to recline his seat, but was unable to do so due to the proximity of my knees. He then turned around and inquired if I would be willing to move my legs to allow him to recline his seat. I informed him that, while I would be happy to accommodate him, it was not physically possible for me to do so. I assured him that I would do my utmost to provide as much space as possible, but that it would be challenging given the limited space available. At this juncture, the individual in question began to exhibit signs of irritation and proceeded to apply considerable force to his seat in an effort to achieve a more comfortable position. It is worth noting that this behavior was not particularly agreeable for me. I requested that he cease his actions, to which he responded that he would only desist when he was able to adjust his seat to a more optimal position. He then proceeded to wait for an extended period, approximately 10 to 15 minutes, before ultimately losing patience. The man then summoned the attention of a flight attendant, demanding the provision of a new seat. The attendant informed him that no additional seats were available and that he would have to accept the situation. The man then demanded to speak with the pilot, prompting the attendant to proceed to the cockpit to relay the situation. It is noteworthy that throughout this interaction, the man continued to exert considerable pressure. He was positioned against my knees with only brief intermissions to vocalize his displeasure to the flight attendant. After a couple of minutes, the co-pilot, who was attempting to communicate with the pilot, returned and attempted to elucidate to the man that he was unable to change seats due to the unavailability of other coach seats. The man persisted in his demand for a seat that was able to. The man continued to demand a seat that was able to recline and an upgrade, and he persisted in making a scene. Finally, the co-pilot relented and suggested that the man sit in business class. The man stood up and muttered something, and the co-pilot responded, "Sir, sit down." The man turned to me and he repeats, "How would you like a seat in business class?" I have to this day, and I have never seen someone as furious as the man I walked past to my new business class seat with free drinks. Co-pilot, more like, bro. Pilots, I work for an office and we have an 8-week busy season with mandatory overtime, 12 to 14 hours a day. During this time, the company has agreed to reimburse employees for dinner expenses up to a maximum of $13 per meal. To qualify for this benefit, employees must submit a claim with their receipts at the end of the busy season. The food options in my area are not particularly diverse, so I often brought my dinner from home. However, on some occasions, I was too tired to cook after a long day, so I purchased meals from external sources. The meals I purchased cost me $1,350, which was 50 cents over the limit. This resulted in a total of $1.50 over the limit, which my manager said was no big deal and that I could include on my expense claim. He signed off on it and everything a few days after I submitted my report. However, a few days later, head office emailed me saying they rejected my expense claim. I was instructed to resubmit the claim after removing the $1.50 overage. I replied, stating that my manager had approved the additional $150 and that I would remove it from the claim. In response, I was informed that overages are not permitted and that the $150 must be removed before the claim could be approved. The email concluded with the suggestion that I should actually read the company policy next time. I acknowledged their point and agreed to do so. I would, in fact, read the policy very thoroughly before redoing my expense claim. The policy stated a $13 maximum on purchased meals. It also allowed for a $10 per diem for meals brought from home were removed from the total, and an additional $300 was added for the 30 meals that were brought from home. It would have been beneficial to read the company policy more often. Some have inquired whether I was paid $300, and the answer is yes. Many have suggested that the individual was trying to help me, but I am not completely certain. Furthermore, the tone of the email was also somewhat abrupt. When the meal policy was initially communicated at the beginning of the busy season, there was no mention of the per diem. Additionally, it was not known to any other members of my department. I ensured to express my gratitude to them, as I was uncertain as to whether they were being sincere or if I was simply too jaded to perceive it. I could not help but imagine a scenario in which the individual in question, situated at her computer desk, was likely contemplating the situation with a degree of disdain, perhaps even entertaining the notion that I was attempting to exploit a loophole to my advantage. I, however, was determined to demonstrate that my actions were not merely a case of slavish compliance, but rather a deliberate and calculated decision. If others were inclined to engage in similar forms of calculated compliance, I would encourage them to view this video and subscribe to my channel.